Hi, I'm D.E. Simmons and I am the Executive Director for Diasporal Rhythms. In celebration of Black Fine Art Month sponsored by Pigment Magazine, we wanted to participate by sharing a collector's perspective on the art of collecting. With no formal training to speak of, we are able to acquire as well as curate this art in our home collections. The best part of the process is when we come together and we share what we've created. We have put together a compilation of our collectors who will be sharing their perspective on the art of collecting.
I have always been fascinated by art from the very earliest. I grew up in a family that was artistic. My father was a frustrated artist. In fact, I was born at home in an environment very similar to this where art was on the wall, art photography was on the wall. This is really an important activity throughout for the whole world. Is that people should be actively involved in promoting the visual arts of their culture, whatever their culture is. We tend to uh, relate to the visual art culture that is fostered onto us from above as opposed to being involved in creating the culture and taking it up, i.e., we have bought into a top down concept for visual arts culture instead of a bottom up, grassroots up visual arts culture. No. Our organization is an organization of art collectors. And so everybody that joins the organization is an art collector and they have their collection. What you're seeing today is just my art collection. Now, I plan to leave it to the organization, but this is mine. We have 60 plus members right now, and each one has a different collection. We don't dictate to our members what they should collect. We let everybody do their own thing. See, our interest is getting people to become art collectors because we've seen a real problem in this community and across this country with people being hesitant to identify themselves as art collectors because they are accepting or have been brainwashed by a concept or definition of art collector that is totally fallacious, but we act on it as if it's real. The concept of art collector is antithetical to art seller because the art collector is acquiring things because they think that this is very very important items, important messages, important encapsulations of the culture, and they are doing it because they have a need one to live with it, but also to preserve it and to ensure that it goes on to others. So the concept of the art collector to me does not involve the concept of selling. We do deaccession. With, that's a term that they use. That if you have your collection and then all of a sudden that which you have collected before you now no longer feel fits into your collection, then you create a situation where you can allow for it to go into other environments through auction, through sale, and so forth. Now, a person that acquires art with the desire in the long term or the short term to sell it is an art dealer. And that is a legitimate definition, it's a legitimate profession, it's a legitimate activity. But the art collector is one that is not thinking nowhere near the level of operation about selling the work. They are constantly about acquiring it, preserving it, and passing it on. There's 1,300 plus pieces in my collection. I live with them, I have them all up, I look at them every day. They are like my children, all right? And I make the analogy that if your mother, with all of your siblings, all standing around, and somebody asks your mother, who is your favorite child? She can't answer that question. That it's impossible.
I look at a piece and go, oh, what about the eyes? So I really look at figurative art from an eye perspective. Even if a piece of art does not have any eyes, or a painting has no eyes, I imagine what they would be like. So everything I really have in my collection that's figurative starts with the eyes. You can almost imagine anything you want. Yeah. You can just imagine anything you want. You can imagine that that person is sad, you can imagine that they're really happy, or they just don't want to say anything. I just want to be. It's okay to be quiet. And yes, I am looking at you, and you're looking back at me, and the expression is odd because I pass through this room a lot. It, of course, doesn't change. It's a figurative piece of art, but my moods change. So sometimes I look at it and I go, ooh, I don't want to look at you today. And I move on to something else. Because that expression never changes. Right. It's how I feel about it that changes, I think. And that's part of, I guess, living with art. When I started out, I wasn't financially where I am now. So you have to go back to that control how much you're spending kind of thing. Because, you know, if you have unlimited resources and money, well, the sky's the limit. So I have evolved. I collect now. I don't look at, well, sometimes I don't look at the price. I go, okay, well, I want that. And, ooh, what does that cost? And if I want it, I just get it. As opposed to early on in my career, in my life, I would go, turn the price tag. How much is this? I don't care if I like it or not. How much does it cost? So I've arrived at a point in my life now, fortunately enough, that I can buy things just based on sight. I see something, I go, oh, I have to have that. And then I ask cost, and I go, I may choke a little bit, but it's like, if I want it, I just get it. And each piece that I've acquired makes me feel a certain way. That's how I knew that I was attracted to the art and I could live with it. If I brought another piece in, for example, I would love it as much as I do the pieces that are already there. So it's hard to rotate. If someone told me right now I had to take one piece of my art and run out of the door, but you can only take one piece and ask no questions, I would say my runners. And only because of the sentimental value that goes along with it. But I like other pieces equally as much, but if I had to take one piece for sentimental reasons, it would be the runners. And I would grab it and run. It's one thing to read in theory, it's another thing to be around people who are doing it the same thing you're doing, and you don't make the same pitfalls that they did because they can tell you certain things or direct you in places where there's gonna be art. It's like, there's art, let's go.
Who did the Billie Holiday and the dance?
Zareb, he's one of my little brothers. He did the dancers, he did Billie Holiday. He's very diverse, and he also did the one behind me, but he did the Billie Holiday. My mother passed away about 11 years ago, and he started painting a lot of stuff. He just started painting. And I went by his house once, and I said, what is in this room? Let me see what you got in here. And he had all this stuff rolled up. And he was painting away his grief. It's like he just started to paint. And I said, this is interesting. I said, well, I want some of this stuff. And he said, which one? I said, what about the Billie Holiday? And he said, okay. I said, why Billie Holiday though? Because believe it or not, he's a minister. And I said, well, why Billie Holiday? He said, because she sings the blues, even though I don't listen to the blues. I started listening to some of the stuff she was saying, and she was in a lot of pain, and I wanted to paint it out. I said, very interesting. So yeah, I started buying his stuff and getting a lot of stuff from him at that point. I made an assumption that I was like on an island by myself and I had an issue, because I would always go out and find something and go, oh, I've got to have that. And I'm thinking, I know people collect this stuff, but are there other people like me that collect it? And when I started being around Diasporal Rhythms, I said, there are people who are just like I am. I go to some of the members' homes and I'm like, they are just like I am. So it gave me a sense of a place that I could belong to. There's a place. It's like saying there's this place that you'll actually fit in. And I could talk about art with like you, and you would understand what I was talking about if I say, oh, I saw this yesterday and I cannot sleep, I've got to have it. As opposed to being around people, because a lot of my friends who don't collect, they would go, okay, the impact would be different. So yes, so I found a place that I could call home, a place that I could go, guess what, these people are similar to me and they kind of like the same things I like. And it just makes a difference, especially now in my life, you know.
It began years ago as a child. As you know, there are all types of art. And my mother started by collecting painted plates, cups, saucers, from having teas with the people in the neighborhood. So I would see the various artwork on these plates, on these cups and saucers. And I just became aware of how beautiful paintings could be, not just on a piece of fabric or a canvas, but all over, artists everywhere. So that's how I started. My first piece, we're gonna laugh about that, because it was a piece that I purchased at a resale shop when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And that piece was $2.50. $2.50. It was a painting of a little black boy, or today we would say Afro-American child. I do not have that painting today because my sister, as she comes, when she visits, she always takes something home. And she took that. She still does that. In fact, she was here last week. And she took a pillow of mine home. It's what grabs me at that time, that particular time. I think sometimes it's the mood that you're in. It's the colors. It's the way it's painted on that particular canvas. There's so many reasons for choosing a particular painting. I purchased this. It's a charcoal drawing because of the eyes. If you look at this piece here, wherever you look or wherever you go, the eyes follow you. She's very, very good with eyes. This here is Jason Jones. This was purchased in 2005. And this piece here, one of my favorites. I just love this wood. There's a funny story behind that. At the time when I purchased this, I was working at a resale store. And this art teacher came in. She was getting a divorce. And she says, you know, I'm desperate. I have to sell this. She says, I need $200. So at that particular time, I did have the $200. So this is how I acquired this. This piece was done by a student at Governor State. What he did first, was made a mass of himself,
Okay.
and then made the urn or vessel and included it into this piece. I purchased it because, first of all, he was an Afro-American student, and I knew that he needed the money. That's very important to support our own.
Yes.
Okay, and I just thought it was so unique. Okay, this piece here on the bottom is an artist that loves to run around with our organization, Diasporal Rhythms. Lois went to Atlanta with us, and I really got a chance to meet him. He had an exhibit out here in the south suburbs, and I thought that I would support him. As I've said before, I always try to purchase work from the artists that I know,
Okay.
so that I can have their energy into my home. This piece was done by a friend of mine, a very good friend, Dalton. I met Dalton, I would say about 15 years ago at Dixon Elementary School. Joan Chrysler is one of the founders of Diasporal Rhythm. Hired Dalton because she wanted to expose our children to black artists. I should never forget, we were having lunch. It was on a Wednesday. It was very cold that day. And Dalton came into the room, and I was discussing with the children the snow, how the sun would melt the snow, and it would turn from the snow into a liquid and so forth and on. And Dalton chimed in. He says, I'm going to draw that. So he started sketching. And that's when I found out he was really someone that I could really connect with. This piece is so wonderful to me. Every morning when I get up, the first thing I do is get my cup of coffee, bring it into my living room where we're sitting now, drink my coffee, and look at this painting. If you notice the painting, you know there's a lot of rhythm.
Yes.
Dalton paints with rhythm. If you look at the painting, you will see eyes and bowls and moons and the sheerness of the fabric that is on the woman there. I've had the painting for over 15 years, and each morning I see something that I didn't see before. To me, that's an excellent artist.
My home, to me, represents a place of peace and tranquility, and a place of security, a place where I can absolutely unravel from whatever the world has put upon my backs, upon my shoulders.
The stained glass is the first thing that we see first and foremost. When you drive up and park your car, the stained glass is popping out at you. And from the stained glass, you enter into the home, and the stained glass is just that wow factor, but then the artwork on the wall is that super wow factor that you just say, wow, this is our house? I'm like, okay, we're doing pretty good. Whereas when my children's friends come by, and they like, this is like a museum. I've never seen this much artwork. Then you realize, okay, we might be doing something correct. One of our pieces we have is done by an 83-year-old by the name of Sylvester Sims. And it's just a woman's back with a rose. But that figurative piece says a lot when you walk into our living room. It's very impactful. So much so that my husband was buying it, and I had no idea he was buying it because the man had already told me that he was going to give me some lovely pieces without purchasing or paying a dime. But This person was writing out a really big check. I'll let him tell that part.
Well, she was looking at the pieces that he was giving her, and I was looking at the piece that was up against the wall. I spotted, and I said, I got to have that.
They're all exciting to me, you know. I mean, I look at Bob Dilworth's Black Cows, and I remember when in 87, when I saw that, I just knew I wanted a part of that, I want a piece of that series. And it was the landscape. It was, you could get lost in the landscape, you know. The Jonathan Green piece, Blue Lady on Orange Chair. That's the strong image in the foreground, but in the background, when you look, in all of the shadows, they're chambers of other women, other experience. They're pregnant images. They're other experience yet to be had in consciousness.
I could say the one that started it all, Heidi Lane. Is that one?
Heidi Lane started it for far as, yeah, it
Far
did.
as collecting.
Far as collecting, but I
Because
think
when I look at it, I think, wow, that's,
right.
wow. I mean, we might have had some before then, but that's the point where I think of actually thinking that's when it started.
And one other piece for us, Lowell Thompson's Boy on the Bus. The original piece was something that was so breathtaking, but the cost was also breathtaking. So we had to figure out how we could get Boy on the Bus, but not at the cost and at the rate that Lowell wants to sell it for. So we were able to secure a piece, a G-Clay Boy on the Bus, and we paid a nice amount of money for it. And I think that was the beginning of us being serious collectors, because no way I would have thought we would have saved money for a piece like that, but we did. And that started it off, and we've had the bug ever since.
I hadn't always thought about, actually hadn't thought about being a collector at all, come to think of it. There are certain artists I wanted to have a piece of them and a piece of the experience. The artists that I've gotten to know, or early on, there was already a friendship, a relationship, a consciousness shared.
We never thought about it. And see, since we're such a large house, the artwork was scattered through the house, so you didn't see that much together. And he told me how much I had, and we had to go back around the house and count the artwork and said, oh, you're right. Had no idea. And that's what we talk to a lot of people about, because a lot of people don't realize they are collectors. They buy a little artwork, they buy some for this room, for that room, something they like to look at, you know, give them deep thought, different reasons, but they don't realize they're collectors. And what we try to do is let people know about the various artists in the community, because once you see how many in the community and start looking at their work, oh, they want their work in your house.
It was 2005 approximately, and I'd been asked to do something with Diaspora Rhythms, and I was not a member at that time, but I was asked to do something with them, and I did. And I loved the fact that I was involved with this art group, you know, a group of artists, but these were also collectors. But I never thought that my collection, or what I was collecting, could even compare to the Daniel Parkers or the James Parker, Patrick McCoy, you know, and some of the other collectors that I've known. I just didn't think that what I had, you know, could compare. And mind you, I didn't have a number of the pieces that I have now either, you know. So it wasn't necessarily, as I said, one of those firework moments, but what it was a subtle, a gentle acceptance.
I would describe our collection as being a figurative collection. A figurative collection meaning that we collect bodies, faces, things that you can make out. We have some abstract, but we're more drawn to faces. And in that, we also are drawn to certain colors, at least I am. You'll see some of the pieces that I have a lot of blue in it. I'm drawn to blue, and that just calms my spirit and makes me feel good.
I think I look for something emotional in the work that I look at. It is, when I say emotional, not necessarily sad or etc., but it has to evoke something, some kind of spirit in me, happiness, serenity, peacefulness, thoughtfulness, introspection, something. And so I think that's how it has influenced the art that I collect. I don't think I had a reason. I just started to collect things that appeal to me. I've always been very much into ceramics and pottery, sculpture, um, and you see that around. So I picked up things. I have a different sense of what being a collector is. A collector is an accumulation of those items and pieces that appeal to you in some manner. I think there are people who collect for investment purposes, and that's a whole um, different motivation. And I think you look at art differently when you are an investment collector. But I call myself an emotional collector. Interestingly, I had been interacting with one of the members for a number of years. We met on a trip. We'd gone to Brazil together, and we were both doing the same things. We were seeking out artists there and collecting items. I was purchasing artwork in Brazil, and what she said to me was, "You should join our organization. We're a group of art collectors who collect artists from the African diaspora, contemporary artists from the African diaspora." And I was, but I'm not an art collector. And her response was, "What are you doing now?" That's exactly what you're doing now. So that was my introduction to Diasporal Rhythms, and I have to say that since I have joined, it's been informative, it's been educational, it's been entertaining, um, and certainly it's helped influence how I view art. I don't have a centerpiece. And the reason I say that is because different pieces evoke different sensitivities. Sometimes I am softened by a piece of work that I look at. I think I have pieces that are romantic, I have pieces that make me think about something. Um, so there's no one piece in the collection that brings up all of those things. It just depends on, I think, where I am at the time.
In the moment.
In the moment, exactly. Most people say it's comfortable. They feel at home when they come in. Everybody has a favorite piece, one or the other, and different. Of course, different people have different pieces that they like. But it seems that everybody finds something that they like, and but the word overall tends to be comfortable. They feel comfortable when they come here, at ease. And even though there are pieces that make a statement, that might be emotional, that might be, thought provoking, overall, I would say that it is that. It's calming. Um, and if I want to be upbeat and, you know, energetic, I can go someplace and get that from my collection also.
They're all personal pieces in a sense. Personal in the sense that the acquisition, actual buying, was not driven on monetary collection potential. They were speaking to a memory and experience, an aspect of life, kind of at that time. And we're downsizing my mom's home, so I brought a couple of pieces here. And these are pieces that I've lived with as a kid. And I didn't have a lot of art in the home, but I had 2 or 3 pieces. And I continue to have those with me. You'll see the sister on the left, that's pen and ink, or just pencil drawing, just crisp and clean. But I've been looking at that sister since I was 9. Wow. And, you know, even as a 12-year-old kid, this is what a sister looked like, you know, kind of thing. So that's the kind of collection that I have, that people, you know, when you come to my house, you'll see just about all these pieces mean something a little bit more than just the surface. You know, there's a memory behind them, experience behind them. I can come through the door and I can hear the you know, the little ripple. What's up, love? Hey, bro. And I get a you know, from a few of my mother-in-law pieces, you know. I feel it, you know. Again, talking with some of these artists, we talked about Raymond's piece back there, the big piece. He says that his piece should have rhythm to it, you know, it should have a little soundtrack, and I agree with that. I think there's a soundtrack to the pieces. So when I come in the house, yeah, I'm being championed, I'm being absorbed by the day, you know, by the pieces to help me deal with the day. Again, they're mood enhancing, mood altering, you know. This is what this is to me, you know, more so than just pieces that I know could be more valuable in 20 years. You know, these are my friends. The first piece that I have that's in this house is something I commissioned at maybe 21, 22 years old, stationed in Korea. But I was enamored with that cubism, you know, of Picasso, as many people, you know, my entree into art. I dug the lines of it, you know. See, I'm a guy that looks at, you know, some of this art and expression, the curves. I'm not a colors person, so color doesn't really kick first with me. I'm into lines and curves. You know, the curves are the emotional pieces, like that Fela piece. The lines, you know, that Picasso is the intellectual aspect of it. So you'll see some pieces that, you know, might mimic that throughout my house. Those that are just linear and graphical. You know, I'm a math guy, so, you know, they hit me from that aspect. At one point, I used to ask other diaspora rhythms about cost valuation, and, you know, but why should I spend this amount of money? You know, if I can buy this for this price versus something at a much higher price, is this better because it's a higher price? You know, am I buying this for that kind of long run? And I think dealing with that for, you know, a couple of years or so, it's more important to buy what's going to accept you, that you're going to interact with on a daily basis. You're going to see it differently, you know, 10 days, 10 months, 10 years from now differently, you know, because they're here. They're part of the home. They're fixtures on the walls. They're there for a purpose, whether it's just colors, abstracts, whatever it may be. So just begin wherever you can by getting things that are really close to you. You know, the pieces that you struggle with are probably the pieces that you enjoy more later on.
What started almost 20 years ago as 4 new friends eager to share their passion for art collecting has since turned into a learning opportunity for art fans of all ages. What's the message behind collectors group Diasporal Rhythms? Invest in art, whatever you like. Our arts correspondent Angelito takes us on a tour of one of the co-founders' collections and shares more about their message.
It's an art collection unlike any other. Upon entering the space, visitors are greeted with an array of eyes, sizing them up before they can even get through the door. Down the main hallway sits clusters of framed men and women, separated by gender on either side. And as the hallway continues, so do the themes. This all sits in the home of a retired environmental scientist and current art collector. There are at least 1,400 pieces of artwork sitting or hanging from his walls, dating back to as early as 1968.
I bought these posters, these two posters here. This poster I've had for 50 years, and it has gone from being in my house to being shows in the museums in around Chicago, and then last year, I got a request for it to go to Miami to be during the time of the Miami Basel. And so this piece went to the Venice Biennale. Now, this is a $10 piece, a college student buying, and all of a sudden, what I have bought is in the highest, most respected art scene in the world.
Patrick McCoy is one of the co-founders of Diasporal Rhythms, an art collectors organization dedicated to exposing the public to art created by artists of the African diaspora.
It's about exposure. You know, we want to expose our community to what's available within the community. The bulk of the artists that we collect are right here within walking distance, okay? And they're doing museum level quality of work. Unless you have the experience of walking and seeing these collections, you don't know that it's possible and how to live with art.
They say it's the only organization in the country of its kind. It has since expanded to 80 art collectors. Together, they organize partnerships with schools, museums, and annual home tours to ensure the public is properly exposed. McCoy frequently hosts field trips and public tours in his home. A poster of Chicago's first jazz festival, stained glass art hanging in every window, outlet sockets covered with painted frames, and even a tableside statue created from forks and spoons. Nearly everything in McCoy's home has taken on some artistic form. Now, when I asked how Diasporal Rhythm members determined what pieces they add to their collection, the answer was simple.
Do what you like, hang it where you like it, buy what you like, and invite us to come see it.
That's how McCoy went on to add this collection of mini bicycles, because in his spare time, he's also a cyclist. And this photo from the Bud Billiken Parade, and all of the other artwork you see taking over nearly every inch of his home. McCoy says together, the group is preserving a significant cultural element of Chicago. That's why he already has a plan in place for his collection when he dies.
I'm going to leave my collection to the organization to do something with it, i.e. try to make an institution around it so that it's always available to the public. Because too often, when the person dies that put the collection together, it all of a sudden it's dispersed, it's gone. We just saw it. The Johnson collection is gone. Yeah. That should never have left Chicago. It should never have been broken up. So I see that and I'm saying, I'm not going to let that happen.
But the future of Diasporal Rhythms does not end with McCoy's collection. In fact, it's propelling them to expose the next generation of art collectors.
He's given us the next generation seeding of what we're doing, and that is to create a home of our own, so that when collections like the Johnsons are looking for a place to be, because there's no contemporary museum of African American art that I know of, but we're going to build it.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.